Indy, and of course that is Ohio State. Here to help us break down this game is Fox and BTN analyst and of course former Buckeyes coach Urban Meyer. Coach, this has been such a compelling series, particularly over the last few years. You've got 3 games decided by a total of 5 points. Give us a little insight into kind of the way these programs view one another. Is this a rivalry game for Ohio State, or is it just a matchup against a really good opponent?
Well, I think when I first got to the Big Ten, that Wisconsin was kind of that team that, well, obviously you got the rival, and that's non-negotiable. That's the way it is. But, you know, Wisconsin was kind of top of the Big Ten along with Ohio State and then Penn State. And certainly in the last few years, just because the quality of team that Penn State is, that's become a war. I mean, my first year we beat them up there, and then we came back here and beat them soundly. And then from that point forward, it's been overtime. It's been, you know, we lost up there in a whiteout. And then these last 2 games have been, we've come from a couple scores behind in the 4th quarter. So, I mean, my goodness, 2 very good teams, 2 very good programs, and great players all over the field. But it's become, you know, a rivalry in sense, but not in Ohio State's. You know, we know which one that is coming up next week.
Yeah, I think it's a big game for both teams. But I think one of the interesting places that this competition extends to is the recruiting base. Now, you guys are going after a lot of the same players often. How tough is that, and how do you manage that when you have a home game? Do you want to bring all your recruits in at that time, or potential recruits?
Yeah, it's always risky. You know, the team's so good this year that, you know, it's risky when you bring in a team, bring in a bunch of recruits and you fail to win that game. But we haven't had many of those around here, and so you want to get, you know, the fans, Buckeye Nation, the band, you know, everything is so positive, so great here that you got to get people here for games, and this is the marquee game of the season for Ohio State. So yeah, they're going to do all they can. And Penn State, Ohio State are nose to nose, not nationally, but on the, you know, the East Coast, we're nose to nose with Penn State on every player, and the Mid-Atlantic area, but not nationally. We're you know, we battle against other schools in the other states, but in that area, certainly we're on every top kid, and so are they.
You know, Coach, you were talking about how big the rivalry is, of course, against Michigan, and that game is next week. In terms of making it to Indianapolis and kind of making sure that they're in a position to accomplish all of their goals, this is the bigger game, as we know, for Ohio State. So what's the challenge for Ryan Day this week to make sure that everyone is focused on this game and not be thinking ahead to the game that you're thinking about 365 days a year anyway?
Well, stand corrected. This is not the biggest game.
It's the biggest game to make it to Indy, though. All right, I mean,
know, but
I'm saying, but that's all I said. I just said biggest to make it to Indy.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. But stand corrected. This is not the biggest game. Next week is. But this is. And what are we talking about? Like you said, to get to Indianapolis, to you know, there's so much on the line with the college football playoff and everything. So a huge game, and you know, Ryan Day is great at it. You know, Coach Marotti is so. These guys are weathered. They played in a bunch of big-time games over the years that they know that the most prepared team is going to win this game. That's a saying that's around the facility, and that's the truth. If Penn State prepares better during the week, they'll win. If Ohio State prepares better, they'll win. And that's what it's going to come down to, and that's in the players' DNA here, and same with the coaches.
Let's talk about another coach that came off a loss in Minnesota, and P.J. Fleck having to get his guys motivated and ready to go once again this week. They are also a team that can't be looking too far ahead to that Wisconsin game. How would you be preparing your team after a devastating loss?
Devastating loss, and you know, they played a good team. I mean, we all know Iowa. Shoot, I know Iowa going up there and playing in that stadium, and as the sun sets and those fans and the all black. I mean, they lost a very good team, and they had a valiant effort. You know, the guys on Big Noon Fox are saying, you know, they were looking past, or there was a big letdown. I didn't see it that way at all. I saw coach and the staff and the team play their hearts out and lost a tough game. And you can rebound from that. And I think he's an excellent coach, excellent staff. They'll be focused on this week, and then it's all the marbles the following week.
I do think it's interesting that you have a lot of teams in similar scenarios this week. I mean, you talk about Minnesota, where they have kind of for all the marbles game next week against Wisconsin. You have the Michigan situation where they have Indiana this week, and then, of course, the huge showdown with Ohio State. So kind of similar concept with Michigan against a really good Indiana team. What's the challenge for the Wolverines heading into this one?
I worry about that one because I've been to Indiana before, and that's a tough place to play. They're having one of their best years in the last 20 years at Indiana. Very good players, and they have to go on the road. And that's the one thing that, and I've been on this kind of kick that, the Big Ten Conference made a decision to play 9 games. Imagine if and the Wolverines are playing, a MAC school or a FCS school right now and getting ready for their game next week. Same thing with Ohio State. Imagine if, we didn't play 9 conference games. And so much this time of year, it's all about the health and who have you played. And if you're beat up and banged up and, because you're playing one of those schedules and you never get a break, those are the wear and tears when you see maybe unexpected losses. And I think the Wolverines, certainly to say they're not at least thinking about next week, of course they are. That's part of their tradition as well. But they're rolling into Bloomington, Indiana against a very good team. I worry about that one. And I think the Wolverines are a better team, but I think, boy, if I was that coach, you just got to really make sure they're locked in for this one because that's a real one.
Coach, let me take you back to Ohio State and go on the field with Chase Young, who had to miss 2 games. Is there any concern as far as conditioning, or do you need to have him on any sort of a pitch count or numbers count with him coming back this week?
Yeah, no concern. With the strength program and everything that they do here at Ohio State, zero concern. I think as a team, and this has been, I've actually had conversation with Coach Day about this, as a team, not just an individual, they've not had to go swing real hard in the fourth quarter all season. And that at some point will change. And you try to create that in practice, and that's a concern of every coach that's in these kind of situations. And I know Ryan and even the player, there's some smart players here. Conditioning I'm not concerned about. I'm concerned is they have not been in a fight in the fourth quarter of a game.
Aside from that, Coach, X and O-wise, what would be the biggest thing if you were in Ryan's shoes? What would be the biggest thing keeping you up at night where you'd say, man, if they take advantage of whatever it is, X, Penn State could beat Ohio State?
I think the back end of Penn State's struggling a little bit right now, and I think the skill is so good at Ohio State that, I think their D-line's pretty good, and then they move around. It's a very well-coached defense. They hurt us last year as well with so much pressure. But that side of the ball, I think Ohio State will take care of the ball. The other side, KJ Hamler, I think he's one of the best athletes in the Big Ten. And, they have more zone coverage now on defense so they can at least keep the ball in front of them. That's the only thing is the skill at Penn State is very good.
Coach, always fun. We'll see you in Columbus this weekend. Thanks a lot.
Good to see you guys.